7 o'clock, so we're going to call the May 9th meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Welcome, everyone. Planning Commission is the body that's appointed by the Town Council to make land use decisions for the town that are based on town policy, ordinances, zoning codes, and whatever else might apply. If you have an electronic device, we would ask that you at least put it on silent. You don't need to turn it off. But if you put it on silent, we'd appreciate it because it can be distracting. And can we do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Seong? Here. Commissioner Bourgeois?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Talsford?
Here.
Vice Chair Erickson?
Here.
And Chair Jensen.
Here. Commissioner Erickson, will you lead us in the pledge, please? Our next item of business is to consider the minutes from our last meeting of April 25th. Are there any corrections, additions, or a motion on the minutes? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'll move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Smith, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. The next item is for us to consider written communications. We do not have any this evening. And the next item is requested continuances. We do have one requested continuance, and that is what is our item 2 on our agenda tonight, which is a consideration of a zoning code amendment to add the state density bonus law to the Los Gatos ordinances, and that's A-12-001. The staff has requested that that be continued to May 23rd so that they can continue work on that. Is there any motion on that item? Commissioner Erickson.
I will move to continue item number 2 on our agenda, zoning code amendment A-12-001 to the meeting of May 23rd.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Talsford. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously, so that matter is continued to May 23rd. We next do subcommittee reports. All of the planning commissioners serve on subcommittees in addition to their duties as planning commissioners. So we'll have committees that consider general plan, committees that consider new applications that are large enough where the applicant might want some guidance from the town before submitting an application, historic preservation committee. And so this is a time when commissioners who serve on those subcommittees will give us reports about what happened. Commissioner Talsford, is there a CDAC meeting this week?
There was one this evening, or earlier this afternoon, rather. And it was unusual in that we haven't usually had this before. It was about a specific code amendment, and the applicant wanted to permit office and personal uses within the C2 zone that was not on our list of what we do grant amendments for. So the property was at 114 Royce Street, and the existing, how do I explain it? It was a situation where it's on a little street, and the well, in our section of Town Code Section 2960-320 was put in place because we want to protect our retail spaces. And unfortunately, this building sits almost by itself in a parking lot, fronting a sidewalk, and it's across from the back of Wells Fargo and behind Forbes Mill Restaurant, if that makes any sense to you. And there's about 3 retail spaces in there, or places for them. And what's happening is there's also behind that building, this is really, and chime in here, really. Behind that, I wanted to explain it to you because it's one of those unique areas, and we had to grapple with it. But behind the retail space that fronts Royce are 2 office spaces that go directly into the parking lots. And so he wanted to turn, the applicant wanted to turn everything into office if he could, but the committee felt that the places that fronted Royce, those places should stay, and there was a possibility that the places in the back that fronted the parking lot perhaps could be the exception and turned into office, because that would make much more sense. It would be, you know, as someone looking for a place to go to buy something, I wouldn't encourage people walking through parking lots. That would be one thing. But there have been exceptions to this existing town code, and this could certainly be another one. So, Nell, how did I do? Do you want to add something?
I thought you did
Commissioner?
great. Are there any questions?
Commissioner O'Donnell, I think, might like to add something.
No, I'm
Really?
fine.
Was that okay? Was it too much?
Feel free.
Let me just say that the section that you described, when they adopted it, they put in some exceptions. So today we talked about adding another exception.
Right.
And I think the majority opinion, by a strong majority opinion, was to consider up to 1,800 square feet of this property, which happens to also coincide with the parking available. The front spaces, which are grandfathered professional uses, would stay the way they are, service uses. So, yeah, that's what you said, right?
That's what I said.
Okay.
Thank you very much. The General Plan Committee also met, but I don't think it was maybe that interesting. But Commissioner Bourgeois, do you have a report?
I sure do. It's going to be a hard act to follow. So the General Plan Committee met just prior to this meeting, and we didn't get to our entire agenda. We had quite a bit of discussion on several follow-up items. We've been working on the affordable housing overlay zones and developing standards for those zones in town. And we had requested several clarifications and more details of staff. So we actually went back through in greater detail some of those issues. And also a new issue was brought before us, including kind of bifurcating the process, taking one of the affordable housing sites and expediting it, because we do have an application before us, so we don't want to slow that up. So we discussed whether or not that process should be separated to accommodate an affordable housing project that is actually being proposed. Other clarifications included some height and parking restrictions, ratios that we were looking at, as well as a long discussion on density transfer within a site. So that's what we covered tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bourgeois. And I think that's it for subcommittee reports. Is that correct? We now come to the portion of our agenda where, if you would like to talk to the Commission about something that is not on the agenda, you may do so. And you may talk about anything that's not on the agenda, and you have up to 3 minutes to address us on that. I do have 2 cards, so I just have them randomly, and I apologize if I'm going to mispronounce someone's name. I'm going to do my best. Steve Baratsoff. Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Baratsoff. I live at 276 Karen Court, Los Gatos. I've been a resident Los Gatos over 60 years, paying taxes about half of that. So I'm here to talk about the Hillbrook situation in Marchmont. My house is on Karen Court, which runs into Marchmont. And there's a proposition towards the Planning Commission to change their use permit to increase their capacity about 30% and add more traffic. The comment that I have is that it's already a very congested area. It's very hazardous to children. There's about 15 more families in the neighborhood. It's turned over in the last 2 years, 2 or 3 years. And I don't see any benefit for the town relative to any commercial aspect and any additional tax. It's a liability, and it's a dangerous situation. They have also gone above their use permit over the last several years, and we have a group that's documented that and submitted that to your group, and thank you very much for considering that. Well, basically, bottom line is what we'd like to do is we like Hillbrook. We like a school there, but they are trying to expand rapidly, and they're very aggressive, and they're not being good neighbors. When they do a traffic control, the word goes out, they carpool, they walk. We had some interesting conversations from people down the street where people were getting in and out of cars, the carpool, to evade the count. So that's not a very good neighbor in our regard. So the use permit, we would like the town to abide by the use permit and not accept their requested for additional use, which is about 30% more students. And I don't really see any benefit for the town for doing that. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Robert Buckley? And sir, you also have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, thank you. Well, I'm one of those parents that turned over in the neighborhood in the last 5-6 years. Good evening, my name is Robert Buckley, and I live at 288 Marchmont Drive, Los Gatos. I'd like to talk to the town council this evening about our children's safety and the negative impact that Hillbrook is having on our community, and ask the town council to support our safety by enforcing the Hillbrook CUP that was put in place. Hillbrook has always been known as a country day school and sits on a residential zone property approved for non-conforming use. The original CUP was put in place in 2001 to deal with campus improvements in existing buildings and upgrade to facilities. Since the remodeling project was completed in 2010, Hillbrook has not lived up to the conditions of the current CUP, and it's evident that it never intended to. In fact, Hillbrook recently applied for a modification to its conditional use permit so they can add 32% more students, 25% more faculty, add additional summer and evening programs, as well as teachers training and conference centers on weekends. I'd like to give you 3 examples of 20 of the violations that we've seen over the last year. Hillbrook agreed to limit their enrollment to 315 students. Instead, last summer, Hillbrook leased a facility to a third-party vendor that ran a summer camp that brought in over 900 students. And you can imagine the impact to the neighborhood. This is a clear violation of the CUP that continue to promote summer camps and weekend use for this summer. To make things worse, they leased the facility this summer to Santa Fe Leadership Center to be used on Sundays. And this is a clear violation to their CUP, and they agreed not to do anything on weekends. Hillbrook agreed to have intramural sporting events and to limit it only to Hillbrook students. In 2010 and 2011, they've done 110 sporting events, and you can imagine what the impact of that has been to our neighborhood, to the point that we don't even allow our children to go out and play in the front yard because we're concerned about the traffic issues and then potentially getting hit in the roads. As everyone in this council probably knows, in February of this year, Los Gatos was awarded a grant for nearly $104,000 by the California Office of Traffic Safety. And the grant is to be used by the Los Gatos Police Department to improve safety around our schools. Matter of fact, the captain of the Los Gatos Police Department recently was quoted as saying, "Safe cycling and walking launches positive lifelong habits and contributes to Los Gatos' quality of life. This grant will further increase the comfort of parents who encourage their children to travel independently to schools." I could tell you today that doesn't happen because of the increase in traffic in our neighborhoods, because of the continuing ignoring of the CUP. The impact of our neighborhood is our children can't play safely. If anybody knows Marchmont, it's an S-turn with a deep grade. And what ends up happening is parents have to speed up to get to the top of the grade, and when they come down the grade, you'll see parents commenting that they got to cover their eyes because of the light impact of the sun, which even makes it a more dangerous situation for our children.
Mr. Buckley, thank you. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap
closing,
up.
I would just ask you if you would please enforce the CUP and protect our neighbors.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bailey, does the Hillbrook application have a date yet?
No, it does not.
So obviously you're paying attention, so when it comes on the agenda, it will be noticed, and you can look for it then. Thank you for your comments. We're going to move on. I don't have any other verbal communication cards. So we're going to move on to the first item in our agenda, which is Architecture and Site Application S-12-025, which is 135 and 137 Wilder Avenue. And it's an application requesting approval to remove a second dwelling unit on property that is downtown. I have one card on this. The applicant has up to 5 minutes to speak, or anybody that's come with the applicant. You don't have to use your whole 5 minutes, but you certainly can. When you're finished with your 5 minutes, or you're finished with your presentation, you may have questions from commissioners. But first, we're going to allow commissioners to ask questions of staff and ask the staff if there's any highlights or issues that they want to bring up from the staff report.
Staff has nothing to add to the staff report, but is available for questions.
Does anyone have any questions for staff? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I just had one question. I was looking through the findings we need to make to approve this, and one of them says the economic utility would increase if the request is granted. I'm having trouble understanding how to make that finding. Could you maybe clarify that for me?
Sure. The finding that's required, or one of the considerations that's required as a finding to demolish a structure, is the economic utility of the existing structure. And the applicant, in their letters of justification, have stated that by allowing the removal of the interior second unit, it actually would increase the economic utility of the single-family dwelling.
And I guess by economic utility, you just mean is it property value? Is it just more functional? Is it either? Or is it as we choose to define it?
It would be monetary value of the property.
Monetary value. Okay, thank you.
Other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I do have one call. Oh, I'm sorry, did not see you. Commissioner Dallas for.
I do have a question. Could I just ask you, because when I visited the property, I noticed two doors, and one faced Wilder and then the other one faced the neighbor. So my question to you is, was this built as a duplex? Is that what they mean by interior second dwelling space?
The interior second unit was legalized as a second unit in the late 80s. The records don't show whether it was built as a duplex, but as the property exists today, it would not qualify as a duplex due to minimum lot standards.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I don't see any. I do have a card on this. Mr. Hirschberger, the applicant, would you come forward? Yes, please. And would you just please give us your name officially and your address for our record?
Yes, Ron Hirschberger, 135 Wilder, although because of the status of the property at the moment, we aren't actually living there, although we use that as a mailing address. We're living temporarily in a rental unit on San Mateo Avenue. And with me are my wife, Gail, seated there, and our daughter, Rhonda, and son-in-law, Todd, and our grandson, Trevor, who are a large part of the reason that we wanted to move to Los Gatos to be closer to them, and particularly to help Trevor with some of his special needs in the various classes and so on that he has to go to. In terms of the economic utility, I would say that I think the property is more valuable as a single-family residence than it is as a two-family unit. The second family unit would be very small. I'm not saying that it couldn't be rented, but I think it would not work very well economically, and I think its greater value is as a single-family residence. So I think that's the way in which the economic utility is enhanced. I hope you have had a chance to read the petition. I do find one part of the town code to be a little bit confusing, and Ms. Savage has been very generous in spending time and trying to show us the applicable provisions. But Section 2940.725 pertaining to permitted uses in the R1D area in subsection 1 specifies single-family dwelling, and then the next one is a two-family dwelling. It doesn't really use the term duplex anyplace. Then in the following sections, it talks about the lot area that's required for a single-family dwelling and a two-family dwelling. And it just seems to me, from the logic point of view, that if it is a single-family residence, but with a secondary family unit authorized, and it's not just authorized. Once it's been authorized, it's really a mandate for you to keep it that way unless we get permission to remove it, that it's more of a two-family dwelling realistically than it is a single-family unit or a single-family residence. But beyond that, as I mentioned in the petition, I think for the two-family units, it specifies the 8,000 square foot lot, or at least for a true two-family. And if we're saying single-family with a secondary unit authorized is not really a two-family unit, but with a true two-family unit, the minimum lot size in this district would be 8,000 square feet, whereas our lot is only 6,251 square feet. And as I stated in my petition, our petition, it seems to me that that's a recognition that you need a lot of that size if you're really going to accommodate two families and give them a reasonable amount of living space on the property. When there is less than that, one of the family units is going to be severely disadvantaged by just not having adequate yard space. And I think that would be true if this property continued to be a single-family dwelling with the mandatory secondary unit. And as to the off-street parking, if it's more than a single family, then 3 parking spaces are required in this district. We only have 3 off-street parking spaces are required. Sorry. We only have 2 off-street parking spaces. If we were truly a two-family dwelling, then we would have to have 3 off-street parking places. So we only have 2. I didn't ask one of our neighbors to...
You're okay. That's warning you. You have 30 seconds left.
Okay. Anecdotally, there apparently have been some disruptions in the neighborhood in the past because when it was used as a two-family dwelling, there were way too many cars on the street, and that apparently has caused some problems with the neighbors.
Thank you very much. Let's see if there's any questions for you. Questions for Mr. Hirschberger. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. I am familiar with the property. When you give the address as 135, is that that's the address that you want to keep, correct? And then the little unit on the left, which has the 137, just gets encapsulated. So I just want to make sure I understand what you want to do. You just want to take that number off the door and...
Correct.
Okay. Now, as you do that, what are you going to do about the garage in the back?
Well, there's the garage has space for 2 cars. We have only 2 cars. They would be parked in the garage.
So there's no, you're not going to do anything with the garage. I noticed on the plans you were just talking about the interior of the house, but I wanted to specifically ask about the garage.
No, we're not planning to do anything with the garage. As I say, it accommodates 2 cars, and we would put our 2 cars in the garage as often as possible.
Because I noticed it didn't have a setback that's usually required, so probably went in before some requirements.
I think that's correct. I tried to get some history about the house. I believe it was built in the early 1950s, 1951, 52, 53, something like that. And then there was a permit issued in 1987 to authorize the secondary family unit.
All right, thank you. Other questions? No one has any questions for you, Mr. Hirschberger. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
And before you sit down, let me see if there's anyone in the audience that would like to talk about this application other than you. Okay, seeing no one, by our procedures, you actually do have the opportunity to rebut anything you've heard. So if you'd like to do that, feel free. Other than that, you're free to sit down.
Okay.
Or add anything. You're fine? Okay.
I'm fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And let me just make sure one more time, because I did see that somebody else came in to make sure that no one wants to talk about 135, 137 Wilder. Okay. Then I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing and look to the commission for any questions that they have of staff. I actually have a question about, I noticed that Ms. Bailey brought the book in. Were you looking at the requirements for two-family or duplex? Could you shed any light on that?
No, I was just preparing in case you asked for a definition of a secondary dwelling unit.
Ah, okay. Then I'll look to the commission, as I always do, for a motion. If you're prepared to make a motion but you have some concerns, I'm sure that your fellow commissioners will hear you out. However, if you are prepared with a motion and want to go ahead, I'll recognize you if you do. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'll make a motion. I would move that that we approve the request, and we find that the proposed project is categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act under Section 15301, that we would also make the required considerations as set forth in Section 2920-150, which is more particularly described in Exhibit 2 of our package, and the findings which are also required in Section 2910-330, which is also discussed in Exhibit 2, and the required findings as, again, required by Section 2910.09030 sub E for the elimination of an existing second unit, and therefore approve the architecture and site application S12025 with the conditions contained in Exhibit 3.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there a second? Commissioner Erickson.
I'll second the motion.
Motion has been made to approve the request. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion or questions regarding the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. So the motion to approve is made by Commissioner O'Donnell, seconded by Commissioner Erickson, and approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
Appeal rights.
That finishes our...
I have appeal rights.
Oh, appeal rights. Okay.
This decision is appealable to the town council. The appeal must be filed within 10 days, and there is a fee for filing an appeal.
Thank you. We do not have any other continued other business. Is there a report from the director?
Just one item. The Planning Commission, or excuse me, the Town Council approved the application at 640 Blossom Hill Road, the Chipotle restaurant.
Any commissioner matters that anyone wants to bring up? Commissioner Talsfor.
So they approved the, let's get back to Chipotle. I'm sorry. I was just curious, is there a chance that will they be approving the signage separately, or who approves the signage? Does the staff approve the signage separately?
That is correct.
Do you know at this point where that signage might be placed?
No, I do not.
You don't? So is there a chance that we could have
You could come in and take a look.
a look at it? Okay, thank you.
Anything else that anyone wants to bring up? Commissioner Sayoc.
More an administrative issue with summer approaching and summer vacations being scheduled. I want to thank staff for giving us heads up on upcoming agenda items, but if you can pull that out even further so that we can start planning summer schedules and what may be coming and what I wouldn't want to miss, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, it's my understanding, Commissioner O'Donnell, you won't be present on June 13th, and Commissioner Talsfor not June 27th, and Commissioner Erickson possibly not June 27th?
That's correct.
Okay. I had asked our secretary that if we got to a point where there were going to be 2 or more people that indicated they were going to be absent, that we do separate polling to make sure that we were going to have quorums for those days when it was iffy. So the sooner we can know the agenda, the better it would be. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. We're adjourned.